Welcome to Outside the Box, a stochastic and fantasy points collaboration. We're going to look at the best parts of all of our tools on stochastic and fantasy points to find the best plays for the week 2 NFL main slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. While you're coming in, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Of course, you can find all of the links for all of the stochastic NFL tools. So the Sims tool, the lineup generator, that is all in the description of this video. You can also find the fantasy points, the YouTube channel, fantasy points website in the description of this video. We're going to get better at getting the best links in there for fantasy points, but you can find a lot of the fantasy points data there. We'll take a look at the fantasy points data suite a little bit today. We'll look at some of the stuff that's available on fantasy points as well as stochastic throughout the video. We're going to be trying to find the best plays. And I am here with an absolute madman, Scott Barrett. I'll show you why I'm calling him a madman in a little bit. If you don't follow Scott on Twitter, you should be following Scott on Twitter, because the reason I'm calling him a madman is because he puts out so much content and it is so in-depth, so long. I don't know how this man sleeps. Scott, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. I wrote like 20,000 something words this week, but honestly, it wasn't anywhere near as bad as last year. I guess that's thanks to the fantasy points data suite, just kind of doing all the tough work for me. I'm feeling good. I feel great. I'm excited about this week. I'm feeling spicy, feeling a little spicy.
Feeling spicy.
Yeah, I think ownership's pretty bad this week, at least when I looked at it last night. A lot of plays I like are sub 5.5% owned. I like more than, what other sites are calling chalky. So I'm excited.
Love it. Chris Ostro says, this show helped me a lot last week with my thought process. Excited for your takes this week. Yeah, I felt like we crushed some of the plays last week. I mean, you had your Brock Purdy to Brandon Ayuk was absolutely dominated last week. And Jason asking, who is this week's Ayuk? He says, great call last week. Yeah, we'll get into all of
real quick. Plays. This week's Ayuk is Jahan Dotson. But
you're already ready to answer. It's Jahan Dotson is this week's Ayuk. All right, Scott's just ready to go. He's giving out the goods right away. I guess you guys don't have to watch the rest of the show. You just got to play Jahan Dotson. Now, let me show you why I called Scott a madman to start the show. So this is just one of the many pieces that Scott wrote this week. I didn't get through all of it, Scott. I was trying to do it in the hour before the show, and it is just.
I put it out as a podcast too, so that's only like an hour long.
That's probably easier to get through. But my God, Scott, this is just, it goes on and on. I'm not even going to get to the bottom here. It's going to take all show for me to just scroll to the bottom. Your week one. This is just the week 1 recap. I know Scott also put out a week 2 preview, and I'm sure other stuff out there as well. Scott is just prolific when it comes to his writing. A lot of good stuff.
I don't do this every single week to this degree. Okay. It's just that like week 1 is kind of like the most important week, or it can be for season long leagues where you want to get ahead of, the new reality of the NFL. And so like I had my rankings, I felt great about my rankings. And then we had more data from week 1, and there were a few things I would have changed because we have that new information. So sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a lot written there by Scott, but we're going to get into a lot of it right here on this show. Of course, the first thing we're going to do a little recap of week 1, talk about some of the picks from last week, what went right, what went wrong, which, to be honest, I haven't prepared my thoughts on that. So we can we'll see what we remember, what we said last week. That's one of the big ones I remember is the Niners being one of your favorite stacks. But we'll try and remember what we said last week, what we think went well, what went wrong. Maybe people in chat can remind us what we said and what went well, what went wrong. But before we do that, I did want to get back to our survivor pick. So we both hit last week. My memory is that we both picked the Commanders. I think you thought that you chose the Ravens just to get different from me. You should just go with the Commanders, because that's obviously the you'd rather have the Commanders done than the Ravens, in my opinion. But you say that you think you picked the Ravens, so we're gonna go with that. So you can't pick the Ravens this week. I can't pick the Commanders. To me, this week is more difficult. Like last week, I thought we had 2 pretty easy options, and I always start by looking at the line. So that's what I've pulled up here on the screen, is just looking at which teams have the greatest lines here. The Bills negative 8.5 stands out, but then we also have the Niners negative 7.5, the Cowboys negative 9. To me, those are. Oh, I guess I didn't even get down to. Oh no, this is next week. So yeah, those are the 3 pretty clear favorites for me. Do you see it any differently? Do you see any other teams that you'd rather go to?
Yeah, one more time. What's your top 3?
So my top 3 is just by the line. So I've got the Bills, who are negative 8.5. We got the Niners, who are negative 7.5, and the Cowboys, who are negative 9.
Yeah. I would put Detroit in there, the Giants in there. If it's like a super large field survivor, I kind of like that. I mean, like, when else would you ever pick the Giants, right?
True.
Or yeah, but if I had to pick, I think you picked first last time, so I'll pick first this week. I'll go with the Cowboys against Zach Wilson, the Jets. I mean, like, easy no brainer. Meanwhile, with Josh Allen, he was horrible last week. Ken Dorsey said he's not going to have him running as much, especially to start this year. He struggled against zone. Raiders looked, surprisingly good. And then 49ers, I know Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay, but I mean, it is a tough matchup, tough in division opponent. I think so, right? They're in the same division. My idea.
Wait, who are you picking?
No, I'm just talking about 49ers Rams. And
yeah.
And yeah, so that those make me a lot more nervous. So I'm gonna go with the Cowboys. And I kind of like the idea of, I know it's chalky, and I know Cowboys are probably a team you want to play again, but it's just, I get better with more information. So I kind of like the idea of playing it safe early on.
Yep. I agree. And I think, I said it last week. I think typically I like to just take the teams with the biggest spreads and like just assume that, like, you want to save teams. Yes, it is true. Like, if it's a tiebreaker, I want to save the team that I think is going to be easier to use later in the year. But like, things change throughout the year. So like, teams are going to lose their quarterback, and it's going to completely change whether they're a team that you're wanting to use later on. So I'm all for just going with the teams that have the biggest spreads. I think that's a great call there. I'm going to go with the Bills. 8.5 point spread here over the Raiders. I think that they're in a great bounce back spot here. They didn't look good in week 1, but I think that they're going to come out and just absolutely dominate the Raiders. We'll see, but I think that's I'm going with the Bills here. So you're going Cowboys, I'm going Bills. Let's do a little breakdown of week 1. So I know one of the things we got right was Brandon Ayuk. You loved Ayuk. He was honestly, the Niners was not really a stack that was very much on my radar, Scott. So that was a great call by you going to that Niners stack last week. I can't take any credit for that one. I did like Kendrick Bourne last week, so that was one pick that I got right. I think Kendrick Bourne I brought up on every show. I liked him a lot. I like Aaron Jones quite a bit. And then the Rams receivers, I think we were both on last week, and obviously both Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua paid off in a big way. Any other takes from last week that you remember that we were either really got right or really got wrong?
Well, I mean, Jalen Hurts did not perform up to expectations. I'll probably just blame that on the absence of Shane Steichen. They'll probably get it together in a few weeks, but I don't think that passing game has looked particularly good. He got there for fantasy in part because of 2 rushing touchdowns, but I mean, like, that's a horrific defense. You'd expect more at the very least. I had a bunch of Calvin Ridley and Brandon Ayuk. I said Tyreek Hill was like the best wide receiver on the week. And I don't know, I just didn't have any like great pairings, like any like perfect pairings or perfect lineups.
Yeah.
I like Justin Herbert a lot. And we talked about Tua, and we were like, yeah, I mean, like, why wouldn't you play the guy who was on the Millie Maker winning lineup more often than anyone else? And then I just didn't play him.
Oh no.
So regret. Yeah.
I got to some too. I told you this in DMs that I missed lock for my primary lineups on DraftKings. So I ended up playing a lot of the afternoon slate, which honestly worked out fine because I got to a ton of Tyreek Hill and Tua, and Kendrick Bourne was in 20% of my lineup. So I ended up working out fine, only playing from the afternoon slate. Fantasy Guru Drew coming in, taking a shot at me. He likes to, every time I post there was a while where I was posting like prize picks cards, that kind of stuff, and every single time I would get like 5 out of 6, 4 out of 5. Like, it was just like I always miss one. So Drew, coming in to give me some shit. Neil, which one of your picks are you going to miss? I don't know. That's the thing. I never know which one I pick. But you reminded me. So 2 of the things that I got very wrong last week, and I blame you for one of them, is I blame you for the Jalen Hurts, because you were you told me that you love Jalen Hurts. That did not work out. But then I very much blame myself for Justin Fields. My 2 favorite quarterbacks on the week were big misses last week. Did not work out by any stretch. So I guess those are 2 that I got way wrong last week, and that hurt quite a bit. What do you think happened with Jalen Hurts in week 1?
I just said it. I think it's the absence of Shane Steichen, which just makes me that much more bullish on Anthony Richardson. I think it'll just take them a couple more weeks until they find their groove.
Yeah. All right. So those are I'd say the biggest misses were just the quarterbacks in week 1. But then if you played Brock Purdy, Scott's guy, then you did okay as long as you had that matchup or that stack in one of your lineups. Went okay. Anything else that we need to touch on from week 1? I mean, obviously we're going to be touching on week 1, but from the week 1 show recap, I don't know if there's anything else that we need to touch on here. But we'll touch on a lot of the plays as we go throughout for week 2, which we're going to preview here, and we're going to go position by position, same way we did last week. And I'm excited to do this, guy. I know that you've already said that there are a lot of players that you like who are going pretty low owned, so it'll be fun to talk about some of our contrarian plays. We're also going to take a look at the chalk and just discuss what we're doing with the chalk this week. And let's start by taking a look at some quarterbacks. So we'll start here on quarterbacks. Of course, I primarily use the Stochastics Top Stacks tool when I'm figuring out which quarterbacks to play. Maybe when we go to wide receivers, we'll take a closer look at some of the fantasy points data, or if at any point, Scott, you want me to take a look at the fantasy points data suite or the wide receiver cornerback matchup, if there's something that you can think of that you'd like to take a look at here, I'm happy to navigate there. But we'll start just talking about some quarterbacks and looking at the chalk guys for quarterback. So currently we only really have 2 chalky quarterbacks, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Starting there, do you like Allen, Mahomes this week? Do you hear playing them? Are either of these guys big fades for you, or guys that you're going above weight to the field on? We've got Allen at 12%, Mahomes at 10%. What's your level of interest there?
Oh, I didn't know Mahomes was going to be that chalky. I figured he was going to go quite a bit lower than that, just because he's like so hard to stack for hand builders. I don't know. I kind of have strong leans on how to stack them, but it's like you could envision a scenario where it's Kadarius Toney, where it's Jerick McKinnon, where it's Pacheco, or it's just Travis Kelce, which is probably how the field's going to play it. And then you can make a similar case for the Kansas City bring back as well. Honestly, I know Calvin Ridley's going to be uber chalk, and he's a great cash play, but so that's kind of how I was approaching that but maybe I'm just wrong on projected ownership. But with Josh Allen, I don't know. You tell me how you play this, but just like I know from doing a show with JM to Win over the years, from listening to Drew Dinkmeyer and a bunch of successful tournament players, is like you just fade the highest owned quarterback of the week, and you can make like an easy counter argument against Josh Allen. I mean, he really struggled last week, but it's also like the Jets own him and they have a great defense, and the Raiders have a bottom 3 secondary. But it's also a zone heavy defense, which isn't what you ideally want for a mobile quarterback. But it's also Josh Allen really struggled against zone last year. He had 10 passing touchdowns to 10 interceptions against zone defenses. But like the biggest thing to me is Ken Dorsey comes out and he says, yeah, we took all the design runs out of the playbook because we want Josh to settle into this offense as a passer and we want to preserve him. And so maybe, in the middle of the season, we'll add those back in so long as he's running out of bounds and sliding on those plays. And it's like, what's Josh Allen without his rushing upside? Like that really hurts him from like a DFS perspective. Just, that's such a cheat code for fantasy, but it's also like, I can envision the efficiency being a lot worse. Like, that's something defenses have to account for. Do you QB spy? Do you mix up the playbook? Do you run? And so you always want to be looking for a hole to poke in the highest owned player at his position. And I think that's a fairly compelling one, but it's also like Josh Allen versus like a bottom 3 secondary, no brainer. I get that as well. What do you think?
Yeah, so I got to say, I had not heard that they were trying to take away some of his running. And
no one's talking about it.
I had not even heard that. That is nuts.
I'm going to tweet about it, but I was waiting until lock.
Yeah, no, that's till lock tomorrow. I love it. Yeah, so I got it. So I've been when Greg and I on the earlier show talked about our favorite stack, I named this as my favorite stack because yes, it is chalky, and I get it, wanting to fade the chalkiest quarterback, but I feel like it's such a smash spot for Josh Allen against this defense. And we actually have him looking in the top stacks, so a little bit under owned, 12% projected ownership, 16% chance of the Bills being the top stack on the board. I also like, we actually have Gabe Davis at really low ownership. I like that you can mix and match. Like obviously Diggs is going to get the ownership, but we have Davis pretty low owned. We don't have a ton of ownership going to either Knox or Kincaid, who I think are also viable in the stack. So I think that I am going to play a good amount of Josh Allen. My guess is I'll play like 20% Josh Allen, something like that. So I'm actually I'm not one to make rules like that. Like, oh yeah, you just fade the chalkiest quarterback. Like I think there are people out there who just do that. I talked to RBX88 a little bit. Guy who's won 3 million makers, and he'll be like, yeah, I just play like 5 quarterbacks a week. He just chooses the 5 best quarterbacks. He doesn't do any of the like gross stacks that I like to do. Different people have different rules, but I try not to have too many rules for myself. I get it. Like the stack is such a big part of your lineup that just fading the chalk and wanting to play all the contrarian guys. Sure, that is one approach that you can do. That is not always going to be my preferred approach. So I think that I am going to play a good amount of Josh Allen here. I'm probably going to mix and match. Like I'm not just going to do Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs. I'll probably be doing a lot of double stacking. And I think that you can even stack without Diggs. You can have Gabe Davis with Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox. I think there's a lot of different ways to stack it up that I think makes sense. So for me, you are making me backpedal a little bit with telling me about this quote that they're wanting to use Josh Allen on the ground a little bit less. Like that is definitely something that gives me a little bit of pause. But I still think like, and I don't know if you've done any kind of like testing, like back testing of this type of theory, but so based on my experience, it's my impression that teams, especially like really good teams, are expected to win a lot of games after they lose, keep their foot on the gas pedal a little bit longer in the game. So I think like the Bills, like they're going to, if they're up by 2 touchdowns in the beginning of the fourth quarter, I think they're still going to keep their foot on the gas pedal just to like, you know, show themselves and show the world that they still are an elite offense. So I think that the fact that the Bills lost kind of makes me like the stack a little bit better. Do you have any impression there? Like, have you done any research on, you know, teams after they unexpectedly lose, like anything like that? Or do you have impressions yourself?
No, I never did a study like that, but I don't think you need to. The argument, like why you want to play Josh Allen, is because the Bills never take their foot off the gas. Like
True.
if you
Good
look
point.
back over the last 3 seasons by point differential or games with a point differential above 30 or whatever, it's like they easily lead the league, and they have Josh Allen not only in the game until the final drive, but like pass heavy until the final drive. Like that's why you want Josh Allen. I will say in my article, primarily because of the ownership, if I'm playing Josh Allen, I want to be stacking him with Gabe Davis to be unique. Like if it's just Allen and Diggs and like they smash, like, okay, what percentage of the field has that?
Right.
A ton. But I also like Gabe Davis a lot. He 2.9% projected from what we have over here at our site. All he seems to do is just like randomly blow up for monster games when no one is on him. The head coach called him out. He was like, yeah, we need a number 2 receiver to step up here. Las Vegas has an easy bottom 3 secondary. They're especially vulnerable deep. Last week, Davis, 50% of his routes against Sauce Gardner, one of the best cornerbacks in football. Raiders, like I said, they also play zone coverage at one of the highest rates in the league. Gabe Davis is significantly better against zone than man.
Where do we have? We have Gabe Davis at 1.3% ownership. So we have him even lower than you have him. I guess my guess is he'll come in a little bit higher than 1.3. Just because everybody's wanting to play this Bills team, and I think, you know, people still kind of have their love for Gabe Davis deep down. A lot of us want to be playing some Gabe Davis. So maybe it gets a little bit higher ownership, but still going to pale in comparison to Diggs. So, but both of our sites have him at relatively low ownership. I think Gabe Davis looks like a great stack here. You said that this is higher ownership than you are anticipating for Mahomes. Is Mahomes somebody that you're interested in playing?
Yeah, I mean 10%. I think I was at like 7.
Okay.
He's a good play. I mean, like, but you know me, I'm a hand builder with only like 3 to 5 lineups, so
Right.
it's tricky. But I'll definitely have one to Mahomes for sure.
Okay. And do you, so, I mean, you talked about all the different pass catching potential options. You got Kelsey, you got Pacheco or McKinnon, and then you got a million different receivers. Do you
I
have
mean,
a lean?
I'm a Kadarius Toney guy. Like I'm
Okay. You're
way
just all
way
in.
too dangerously high on him. As I said
Okay.
that, I don't know if you heard that, but like massive
I
crack
did.
of that's either a good
Right.
sign, but
Don't do it,
or a really
Scott.
bad one. Yeah,
That's what it's God telling you. Don't do it, Scott. Or do do it. I
exactly.
don't
The
know.
wrath of God.
The wrath of God on Kadarius Toney here. Um, all right. So those are the chalkier quarterback options. I know that you told me that you have a lot of interest in a lot of pretty low owned players on this slate. Who else do you like at quarterback? I mean, those are really the only chalk options. So open it up to contrarian quarterbacks. That's basically everybody else. So who else do you like here?
I like Daniel Jones.
Love it.
Yeah, he sucked last week, but he was under pressure on 71% of his dropbacks. Like, if that happens to Mahomes, he's scoring like 12 fantasy points at most. Like, it's just impossible to succeed in that environment. And so he leaves behind a worst possible matchup to face a bottom 5 secondary. And at least heading into the season, what was projected to be the league's worst pass rush. The issue with this is that, and by the way, like Daniel Jones is someone who's like against top 12 pass rushes, averages like 15 fantasy points per game. Against bottom 12 pass rushes, averages like 25 fantasy points per game, something like that. But the issue is like new head coach, Jonathan Gannon, highly successful defensive mind. And I think the Giants offensive line like really might just be that bad,
Yeah.
especially if Andrew Thomas sits out this game. Game time decision. But then again, like that was my counter argument against Tua. It was like he was missing his Pro Bowl left tackle, and that didn't seem to matter. Obviously, like I said, I like Patrick Mahomes, so I like Trevor Lawrence quite a bit. I think you add a receiver of Calvin Ridley's caliber to this offense, and like they lost no one else, so it's just like immediate boost to their potential. The Chiefs gave up the second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks last year. Trevor actually didn't play very well last week, but there were a ton of big plays open that he just missed his receiver on, like a lot more than we saw last season. And then for more contrarian quarterbacks, where do you have all right, Jared Goff? The
6%.
last time these two teams faced off, they combined for 93 points.
Yep.
Seahawks were really good against the pass last year, but they were horrific last week. This is a home game for Jared Goff. That's huge. He had 23 passing touchdowns at home last year, only 6 on the road.
Wow.
I think he's a great play. I think he's a really strong value. Where do you have Lamar Jackson? Yeah, Lamar Jackson at 2.6% is so scary because like all the sharps were on Lamar Jackson last week, and now he has Mark Andrews back. Like, don't you think he's going to be more successful with Mark Andrews? I think Brock Purdy is another guy, disrespected every step of the way, disrespected as Mr. Irrelevant in the 2021 draft, disrespected in best ball drafts this offseason. DraftKings disrespected him in price, and now by projected ownership, he's disrespected as well. Wow. And again, it's the same argument as last week. Is like he's too cheap. His pass catchers are way too cheap. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, I do have a favorite, are severely mispriced. Third highest implied point total of the slate, and Kyle Shanahan owns the Rams. They have a bottom 3 defense on paper, and then. If you want to talk galaxy brain plays, I like Matthew Stafford just a tiny bit.
Okay.
But that's don't tail me on that. That's galaxy brained.
So, I mean, I think, there's part of me that wants to just like all of these wide receiver discussions, save it for the wide receiver, but we can talk about our wide receiver. I mean, you say you have a favorite between Deebo and Ayuk. I don't think we need to tease it and save it for the wide receiver section. Let's talk about who do you want to stack Brock Purdy with?
This one, I gave it a lot of thought, but it's going to be, it's going to be funny, and then I screwed something up. Sorry. It's going to be Deebo Samuel. So last week I was like, Brandon Ayuk is their man beater, and they're playing a team that runs an extraordinary amount of man coverage, one of the top 5 highest rates in the league. And now it's the exact opposite. And we know Deebo Samuel's their resident zone beater. The Rams played man coverage on only 4 plays last week. They ranked dead last in man coverage snaps last season. And then like Samuel just owns the Rams. He averages 28.3 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his last 4 games against them. The counter argument to this, which is like, so what I'm doing is I'm going to have one or the other on the far majority of my lineups, and then I'm going to try and like mix exposure, is just that like there's some redundancy between Debo and McCaffrey, and you really saw his usage slip following McCaffrey's arrival. So that's like the hole you would poke in it. But like,
yeah,
I do lean Debo.
Okay, yeah. Swaggy Peter says Debo is going to explode this weekend. He crushes the Rams every single time he sees them. And then Andrew Black adds that these stochastic sims love Debo, which makes sense. He's only 5.6K. Nice matchup. So yeah, Debo going to be a big part of my lineups. But it sounds like Ayuk for you also. Like Debo is your preference, but doesn't mean that you're.
Yeah, I also just think like Ayuk is better and like what he does is more valuable. But
I'm not gonna get into it, but in my my keeper league team, I had Ayuk, and he was like, oh, this big prospect, like just gonna crush for me. I had such a win now team, and then he's in the doghouse immediately. What is this? 2 years ago when Ayuk was just like totally in the doghouse, and then I traded him last year in a trade to get Derrick Henry, and now he's like all of a sudden looking like an incredible play again. So just frustrated with Ayuk as a guy who was going to be a building block, and now I've traded him away. Now it looks like he's finally becoming that dude for the Niners. But yeah, he looks pretty damn good. I also want to touch on Chris Ostro's question with the Josh Allen sack. Do you feel it's necessary to do a bring back? He says, I feel like everyone will just use Devonta Adams, but I could be wrong. So I would say not necessary. Like I prefer to have a bring back in most of my lineups. I think at least like half of my lineups will have a bring back, but it does get expensive quickly, especially if you are playing Allen with Diggs. It's going to get really expensive really quickly if you want to play Devonta Adams. I still think I'll do it some. I'll do the Allen, Diggs, Adams, and along with maybe Dawson Knox or Dalton Kincaid to keep the price tag down, or do Gabe Davis. If I do Gabe Davis, you can afford to play Devonta Adams a little bit easier, and also brings down the ownership a bit. So the answer is no, I don't think it's necessary. I still like we'll do it in a lot of my lineups. How do you feel about it, Scott? Are you going to be in your Josh Allen lineups? Do you think you're going to be using a bring back from the Raiders most of the
time? I guess you wouldn't have to, like we just said with the Bills keeping their foot on the gas. Like even if these curb stomp them, Josh Allen could still get there while no one else does. But I would try to get a bring back. I mean, you can make a case for Josh Jacobs. Like this was the most concentrated offense in fantasy last year, and it was in week 1. And now you just removed a big chunk of it in Jacoby Myers. And Josh Jacobs is one of the most game script sensitive running backs in fantasy. But he does have the on paper matchup. Bills really struggle against gap runs, which is 90% of his runs. I worry a little bit about the game script, but that's the argument for him.
Okay. I got another question I want to pull up here, but before I do that, I have to ask you about what is your shirt? What does it say? What is it about?
Oh, it's Founders Edition Fantasy Points shirt. We made these when we launched the company in 2020.
Oh, is it that new of a company? 2020. Wow. Okay. That's a cool shirt. I also wanted to bring up Gain Bangers.
Maybe this is spicy, but we missed out on my top 2 cash quarterbacks of the week.
Ooh, all right.
And I'm not seeing them in the top 4. Anthony Richardson's my QB1 of the week. And apparently he's only 4.1% owned, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, I had highest exposure to him in tournaments. He was my cash quarterback last week. He was severely mispriced last week. He's still mispriced based on his usage, based on his performance, based on the film. He was way better than even I expected. Like I said at the top with Shane Steichen, this is why I was all over him in redraft leagues. I think the Shane Steichen thesis is correct. This guy is an elite quarterback guru, especially hyper mobile quarterbacks, probably. And I think people are sleeping on this game. The Colts ranked 5th in neutral pace last week. The Texans ranked 3rd. And yeah, so I love Anthony Richardson, and my number 2 cash quarterback is Justin Herbert. Like, I'm still just as bullish as I was heading into the season. I think we could just chalk up last week's poor performance to Vic Fangio getting the better of him. That's the hole we poked in him last week. And he's going up against what's probably the worst secondary in football. Titans ranked bottom 6 in yards per dropback allowed last season. They're especially vulnerable to wide receivers. So, dub stacks are easy. So yeah, I mean, those should be the quarterbacks I have the most exposure to this week based on at least what you're showing.
I got to say, I did a show earlier today with Greg, and I felt like I'd named all but like 5 or 6 quarterbacks as being quarterbacks that I like this week. Yeah, Justin Herbert against Tennessee. They tend to be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a bit of a pass funnel defense too in Tennessee. Is that correct?
Oh, Tennessee for sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's always been.
Absolutely. What about the other side of that one? So I was kind of curious about, so Ryan Tannehill had just an awful game last week. Coming in at 5% projected ownership is where we have him, but the Chargers also a pretty bad defense, might need to be throwing a lot to keep up with that Chargers offense. Do you have any interest in Ryan Tannehill this week?
I mean, he was so bad last week. He was as bad as, we haven't seen him that bad since the Adam Gase days. Now DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is probably going to miss this game. I wouldn't be surprised if he scores fewer than 7 fantasy points this week, but he gets a Chargers defense that just gave up 466 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's cheap. All of his pass catchers are cheap. And he's also like weirdly positively correlated with Derrick Henry, who has like an amazing on paper matchup, like at least on paper, where like maybe all he needs is just Henry to keep getting him into the red zone. That feels like a little too galaxy brain, but I get it.
I'm all about the 2 galaxy brain. I have some. I'd be more interested if he was coming in at like 0.5. If he was 0.5% owned, I would be all over it. Since he is getting 5% ownership, we actually have him a little bit over owned, so it's not quite the level of galaxy brain that I like to get to necessarily when the field's getting there. But at least interesting. I think I actually would have preferred him if DeAndre Hopkins was active, just because he was such a target monster last week. It was just an easy stack to do with Hopkins, whereas now it's like probably going to be spreading the ball around. I know Chig is your guy. We'll get to Chig when we talk about tight ends, but it's a cheaper stack now, so I guess you got that going for you with the Titans. But I don't know how much. My guess is I'll have at least a couple Tannehill shares, but probably not somebody that I'm going.
Who do you think is the cash quarterback of the week?
Cash quarterback of the week. I mean, so I never play cash, so I should give you that.
All right. This isn't a cash show. What are you doing? We can move on.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, Josh Allen might be my cash quarterback if I'm being honest.
I feel like that's most people's. Yeah.
But I like the Richardson call. I know that you were high on Richardson all off season, and then he looked good in week 1, and now he's playing against Houston. Like, a lot of reasons to love Richardson here. So I do like that call, and he's obviously a lot cheaper, so he allows you to pay up at other positions. So yeah, I think that is very much in play. I mean, you said that Jahan Dotson is your guy this week. What about, are you playing any Howell?
No.
Just the one-off, just Dotson. You're not playing any Howell. Okay. Fair enough. Let's see any others that we need to. What about Jordan Love? I want to throw that one out there because he's got the Atlanta defense. Looks like he's a little bit over-owned. He looked good last week, though. Sadly, to my dismay as a Vikings fan, I thought Jordan Love looked like an adequate NFL quarterback. Any interest there against Atlanta?
I can see a lot of DFS sharps playing that. Maybe even like game stacking this, because it's like one of those things where Jordan Love was the best quarterback last week for fantasy, for NFL, after Tua, of course. He looked amazing, and he did it without Christian Watson. He did it with Romeo Doubs on a snap count. And Atlanta, they have all these valuable, like why can't Desmond Ridder succeed for fantasy when you have Kyle Pitts, when you have Drake London, when you have Bijan? And they did have those random spike weeks. Marcus Mariota had like some really big games. I'm not going to play a single person from this game, but I can see a good old fashioned slot fest between these two.
Yeah. Nine God pointed out Jerry Jeudy active this week. Any interest in some Russ Wilson?
Nope.
Mr. Unlimited. Even though you know he's unlimited, you still don't want to play him?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
All right. I'm not going to Russell Wilson. That is interesting that Judy is active. Man, that was Marvin Mims. I could not believe how little he was used. There's always that one thing week one. There's a couple every year.
I mean, rookie wide receivers are like historically a trap in week
Yeah.
one, and then Puka Nacua and Zay Flowers go nuclear. We just were on the wrong one.
Yeah. Nodom says need Taylor in here to tell you to pay down for cash quarterback. I don't know off the top of my head who Taylor is. But so maybe Josh Allen not to play. Again, I don't play cash, so I'd probably run like the optimals and see which of the top optimal lineups look the best and choose from there is how I would play cash. But yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. And he says I would need to be blackout drunk to game stack Atlanta. All right, so you're not going to the Jordan Love stack against Atlanta. Green Bay's defense a little bit better than I thought it was going to be. I thought Green Bay's defense was going to be just a free play for the opposing offense. Didn't look that way though in week one, unfortunately. And then Ray points out Love was the least pressured quarterback last week. Yeah. All right. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about, Scott?
You're not on Justin Fields?
I don't know, man. I feel like Tampa's defense is better. Of course, this would be like after being all in on Fields last week. Of course, this would be the week that he's going to come out and just absolutely crush. I think he's in play every week because of the rushing upside, but don't love the matchup as much against Tampa. 2% ownership is kind of juicy. Now that you brought him up, I am kind of thinking like maybe I'll probably play some Justin Fields just because he's always got the possibility of just absolutely like putting up 35 fantasy points, breaking the slate kind of play. It's not as good of a matchup as it was. Like I don't love it as much as last week, but 2% ownership, certainly juicy. I think I'm talking myself into a little bit there. Are you playing any Justin Fields?
Probably not. But I mean, I think the matchup is significantly better. And I think the stack is obvious. Like I think DJ Moore is a legitimately great play who's drawing like 2% ownership. It's like
True.
Everyone's writing him off as dead. Like he's priced as like the wide receiver 25 on DraftKings, but like among slate eligible wide receivers, he was being drafted as like wide receiver 13. And like he struggled last week. It was like, yeah, obviously he was shadowed by Jari Alexander. Right. Now he's up against Tampa Bay, who they're down Carlton Davis, who's their typical shadow cornerback.
Right.
And the last time he played Tampa Bay, Davis was out and he scored, 30 DraftKings fantasy points. So I think he's an awesome play. And so that stack's obvious. It's just like, can Justin Fields get there? I was talking to one of our film charters who watched both of these games and he was like, yeah, it was crazy. Like Justin Fields looked like the guy who has only started 13 career games since high school. And Anthony Richardson looked like the savvy vet. We heard from our NFL insider, we heard some like really bad things on Justin Fields this offseason. And yeah, to me, it looks like he hasn't made any improvements whatsoever. He looked lost. And so all that's a big concern.
So with that said, I mean, you say that the stack is easy with DJ Moore, but if Justin Fields is looking that bad, going back to it, do you think you're going to play any Fields? Despite,
I mean, I'm probably only going to have exposure to 5 quarterbacks, right. So it's just going to play around with some lineups tonight and see what I like the most.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. But yeah, certainly I think in play at the very least for Justin Fields. That's a good call out because I was all in on him last week and then didn't even bring him up this week. So that is,
I mean, we should say like this is week 2. This is what you do. You get weird because like what people are overreacting to a 1-game sample size. Yep. They're saying this is the new reality of the NFL. DJ Moore is going to suck every single week.
Right.
Gabe Davis is going to suck every single week. And Puka Nacua is, literally Cooper Kupp for the remainder of the. And so it's like, yeah, what are the most dominant narratives? Like, let me just automatically do the opposite of that because, that's where the incentive is in tournaments. That's where you make your money. So I think this is a great week to get wild, get weird, have some fun.
All right, let me throw out one more quarterback because I didn't even bring him up on the show earlier. Any interest in CJ Stroud?
No, I mean, he has an injury to his throwing shoulder. Making his second NFL start.
Yeah, he threw it a lot. He threw like 44 times last week. He had was throwing
yeah, and then the coach said that we need to go back to the run and blah blah blah.
I hadn't heard that. All right, I think that'll do it for quarterbacks. Unless you have any other notes on the quarterbacks here.
No.
All right, let's move on to talk some running backs. Then I'll move over to the Boom Bust Duel And then, of course, if you have anything in the fantasy, I know you've got a lot of info here, but if you have any particular metrics you want me to pull up, I can pull those up as well as we talk about some running backs. So looking at running backs for the main slate, the highest owned in terms of our projected ownership, we actually have several running backs that we have projected for over 10% ownership right now. And I'll go down the list here. Christian McCaffrey is our highest owned player, followed by Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Saquon Barkley, James Cook, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Derrick Henry, Rashad White, Tony Pollard, and Joshua Kelly.
All right, stop right there. I think Joshua Kelly should be 1 on that list. I think Tony Pollard should be 1, and then Joshua Kelly 2.
Tony Pollard 1 against the Jets.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is so like I'm not if Christian McCaffrey gets here, go to the fantasy points data real quick.
Yep.
And go to the bell cow report. This is like just one of our smaller features. This is just something I've had in a spreadsheet for a decade that's made me a lot of money in fantasy. And just click on snap share. Right there. Yeah. Christian McCaffrey, the top bell cow in fantasy, had 65% of the carries, 77% route share. That's like more than a lot of wide receiver 2s, 14% target share. You can go back to what you were showing before, but it's like the most valuable role in fantasy on one of the best teams in the NFL. And it's one of the best players in the NFL.
Yeah.
If he gets that usage, and I'm not talking volume, just usage, that same snap share, he should be, I don't know, like $2,000 more expensive.
Yeah.
Best play of the slate by far. I don't know that I trust that, just because like last year we saw Elijah Mitchell mix in so much. This was also like Mitchell game script. It was a positive blowout victory. Like the question is like, hey, was it just week 1 and you like really wanted to win week 1? I don't know. I don't know, but like, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a lot more of Elijah Mitchell and company. So right now I have it, Pollard 1, Kelly 2, CMC 3, something like that. But yeah, Tony Pollard, it wouldn't surprise me if he finishes this season as fantasy's RB1. This is what I kept talking about all off season, was like, look at how dominant he was for fantasy. Finishes like the RB9 in fantasy points per game, despite being capped at 45% of the snaps, despite Zeke getting all of the goal line work, despite, having his touches halved. And so like, if he could just get 50% of what Zeke leaves behind, then he is like an easy league winner. And like last week in a game that was never competitive from the start and finished 40-0, he saw awesome usage. Better than that, Tom Pelissero said before the game, he was like, well, it's just week 1. They're going to take it easy on Pollard. So only like 18 to 20 touches. And like, this is the most efficient running back in football over the last few years on 18 to 20 touches. Oh my, like ridiculous. The defense is elite. Mike McCarthy, just wants to run the damn ball, nothing else. And so like the matchup's similar. They're going to curb stomp Zach Wilson. He'd get 150 yards from scrimmage. He'd get 3 touchdowns. It wouldn't surprise me. He had already half as many carries inside the 10-yard line last week as he had all season. And so love him. And then I don't know why Joshua Kelly's not RB1.
He might be. I mean, I think somebody in chat said that they're expecting Josh Kelly. Yeah. Don't move. So Jay Kelly going to be way more owned. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see the ownership come up by tomorrow. This is, pretty early ownership runs following the Eckler news. So it's very possible that Joshua Kelly ends up higher owned than we have him right now.
He's going to be volatile. Like I'm writing him up as a cash play, but he's going to be, where his median projection is like low end, mid range fantasy RB1, but it's like massive volatility where like he could have 3 touchdowns and it wouldn't shock me. He could have 40 yards from scrimmage and it wouldn't shock me. It's like a brutal Titans pass funnel defense. Not a great matchup, but it's just like obscene usage. Chargers led the league in running back XFP last year. Eckler led the league, and you can go back to the data suite and just click on XFP, but Eckler led the league, led the position at expected fantasy points last week, and Joshua Kelly to the left a little bit. Oh yeah, that works. So see Eckler at the top, and then Kelly still had 16 carries. So like it's
Right.
just massive volume. And the matchup you could argue it two different ways where it's like, okay, on paper, Titans really good against the run, really bad against the pass, but it's also like, I don't know. Like I think the Chargers could be in the red zone, like on 80% of their drives, just because they are so bad against the pass. But you can go back, but yeah, those are two guys who stand out to me.
Okay. Yeah. That's I like, so I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty good about Joshua Kelly as the running back in best ball, who I have the most dollars spent on. So he's not in the
Wow, way
highest
to
number,
go.
but I it's because I drafted most of my best ball mania teams late in the summer. And that's the high, like I did a lot of like $5 puppy kind of drafts. So it's not my highest owned running back, but by dollar volume, because I did so much late in best ball mania, and I was just jamming in Joshua Kelly. He was my favorite 18th round pick. Sometimes I took him in the 17th round in late draft. So feeling really good about the Joshua Kelly role. Now expecting him to get hurt week 2 and not benefit me all that much. But that was, yeah, cool to see Joshua Kelly looking good early on. But I want to go actually back to Tony Pollard just a little bit. So you gave me a ton of reasons for why Tony Pollard is going to be a great play all year. Scott's doing something. The only question that I want to ask, assuming you can still hear me. The only question that I have is, the Jets defense isn't scaring you away from Tony Pollard. Like it's not a big enough factor to drive you away from him. Is it because, I mean,
they're a run funnel defense. That's exactly what you want.
Are they? Okay, I saw somebody in chat said
I mean, they're probably good to above average against the run, and then like top 5 against the pass. So at least theoretically, it funnels volume to the run. And like,
okay.
Guess what? The Cowboys have a run funnel offense, so like that's perfect.
Yeah. All right. So you don't mind the matchup for Tony Pollard. That's wheels up for Tony Pollard for Scott this week. That is that's interesting. You're talking me into it a little bit. Man, that the defense just scares me overall. I feel like it could be a very low scoring game there. But I also like, do you have concerns that the Jets are just going to try and run the hell out of the ball now that they have Zach Wilson at quarterback? Just like it's going to be a Cook Breece Hall, just slowing the game way down.
Yeah, definitely. But it's also like the Cowboys can start every drive from the red zone.
Okay. Fair. Good point. All right. Gain bangers. I like this call out. I also love the name Gain Bangers. What a name for YouTube. 215 people and 33 likes. Yeah, please do like the channel. Give us a like on the video, guys. Would really appreciate that. Manny asks, is Mahomes naked a viable strategy in the Millie? I would say no. So it's not that it can't win, because Mahomes like obviously does spread the ball around quite a bit. So like, yeah, it's possible for Mahomes to be in the winning lineup without a pass catcher. But the reason that you really want to be stacking is to limit the number of things you need to get right. So like we have going in, what is it, nine leg parlay essentially. You have to pick the right 9 players to start. But then you can limit it by just saying, okay, well, I don't need to get everybody right, as long as I can just say, okay, this stack is going to go off, and it just lowers the number of legs you need to get right in the parlay. So yes, Mahomes could win naked in the Millie, but you really like to limit you stack to limit the number of things you need to get right, and that's why double stack is even like you like that better than a single stack or in the bring back. Like you're just trying to find the right environments. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I'm just getting cooked by someone in chat for hitting my jewel. Yeah, I want to say something too. Another reason why I do like Mahomes and why he's maybe a little more viable naked this week is because we really saw him take off and rack up some yardage with his legs, and he did that in the playoffs. We know he has that potential. It's like he only breaks that out of his toolkit when he's in dire need, like he was last week, because the receivers were so incompetent. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he, over the next 5 weeks or so has more rushing yards and rushing fantasy points than Josh Allen. Wouldn't be a huge surprise to me.
Wow.
But no, I'm not playing him naked.
Okay.
In the middle.
All right. Back to running backs. So this is an interesting one. We haven't got there right now. We're kind of talking through the chalk, but I do want to get to this question about Zach Moss and then Patrick Taylor, not somebody that had been on my radar. We can discuss that a little bit once we get to contrarian options. Let's keep on moving through these chalk guys a little bit. So do you have, of these guys that are getting 10+% ownership, anybody that is a like fade for like a major fade for you?
I wouldn't play James Conner as the RB3 by projected ownership. I mean, the volume's awesome, but just like no touchdown equity. Josh Dobbs is absolutely garbage. Josh Jacobs, I mean, like I said, I really worry about the game script. James Cook, Damian Harris had 100% of the team's snaps inside the 10-yard line last week, so maybe he doesn't have much of a touchdown ceiling. David Montgomery, like, I don't think he's a good play. Jahmyr Gibbs, they're saying, is going to get a lot more work, and like I get it, especially after DeAndre Swift went off and he traded him away for nothing, and Gibbs was a top 12 pick on a running back. But it's also like people are you go back to the bell cow report really quick, and then find a player or team top left, type in Lions. And so, yeah, 77% snap share. Wow, that's awesome. But it's like, look at the difference in XFP. Really wasn't a significant difference, because, you know, Gibbs gets the targets. He got targets inside the 10-yard line, and targets in fantasy football and PPR leagues are worth 2.5 times as much as a carry. And this was with Dan Campbell saying we're going to ease them in. I take it easy on rookies. They need to see that NFL game speed, and then the wheels. And like he said multiple times this week, like, of course he's getting more. The guy led, my favorite stat for running backs, led the position in missed tackles forced per touch. He's so dynamic, so much more explosive and dynamic than David Montgomery. I mean, Monty's probably a better play for cash, but for tournaments, I think Gibbs is a much, especially when Monty's chalky.
Sure.
And it's also not the same Jamal Williams touchdown guy role for Monty. At least like the coaching staff keeps saying it's not.
Right. Any concern with the fact that so like Gibbs, I feel like primarily the reason we want him is for his receiving upside. So he's been for me a guy that I drafted a ton on DraftKings in best ball for the PPR. Like I drafted him more in places that it was full PPR as opposed to half PPR because of the elite receiving abilities. But then in week one, the Lions used David Montgomery more because he's a better pass protector. So he was used more on passing plays than Jahmyr Gibbs was, which, you know, was kind of counterintuitive to me. Do you have any concerns that they're going to keep running David Montgomery out there because he's the better pass protector?
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's meaningless because you don't get fantasy points for pass blocking snaps. So, like, you know, those were plays that weren't going to go to a running back anyway. So I don't really think that matters. Also, the matchup is like way better for Gibbs than it is Montgomery. The Seahawks held the Rams to just 2.19 yards per carry. But over the last 3 seasons, they've given up the 10th, 1st, and 6th most receiving yards to opposing running backs. So I think that kind of fits Gibbs' skill set a little bit better. Okay. But I mean, like, Gibbs is an amazing play. I just want to dump all over David. I mean, Montgomery's not terrible, but
sure. I mean, he looks good in the field. We've got positive leverage on Montgomery, so I'm probably going to play some Montgomery as a result, assuming that this positive leverage holds up by tomorrow. Obviously, these things can change over the course of 18 hours, whatever we have going until, or 20 hours. Things might change, but if we retain this kind of positive leverage, I'll probably play some David Montgomery. I'm not going to go overboard because I don't know what exactly the upside is there for Montgomery, but the price tag is right. He's got a great price tag on both DraftKings and FanDuel, and had a lot of usage in week one. So it'll be interesting to see how things end up going. Don't Move says split the it got first in the Thursday night football 150K huddle. Congrats, Don't Move. That is always fun to get first, even if you are splitting some ways. Good to make some money there. So congrats there. All right, back to the chalk. Do we have any other fades for you among the 10% plus owned guys? And it sounds like Josh Kelly, Tony Pollard are kind of like your biggest interest among these guys, and Christian McCaffrey, your biggest interest among the high owned guys. Any others that you're really interested in, like above what the ownership is, and any other big fades for you?
No, but I definitely have some players who are a lot lower owned who I'm excited to play.
All right. I know that about it. We talked about it a little bit, that you're excited about some guys that are getting like under 6% ownership. So let's jump into some of those players. Who do you like that's not getting much ownership here?
I think Zach Moss is a legitimately good
Yes.
play for cash. What do you have for him?
We have Zach Moss, and this is
He's
for
right
big
there.
tournaments. We've got him at 2% ownership in tournaments. Now in cash, so again, I don't really play cash. My impression is like typically you're going to want to play guys that are higher owned, but I don't know that necessarily makes sense. I've heard that line a lot, that you'd rather play the guys who are higher owned. And I can kind of see it both ways there. Like you don't want to get too far off the field. You'd rather just, I don't know, beat not risk losing all of your money on some really chalky guy going off. But at the same time, if you have Zach Moss projected really well point per dollar, why not just go for your top projected guys? So you think that he's a legit cash game play?
Yeah, he's a great. I mean, we talked about how people are sleeping on this game a little bit, just in terms of pace of play at the very least. But this was like a must draft player for me, one of my highest owned guys in best ball. Deion Jackson last week ranked third among all running backs in expected fantasy points. Amazing volume. It was also like the third least efficient game of any running back in 12 years. Like he's terrible. Evan Hall is now on IR. Moss was the clear RB1 for the Colts last season. 17.3 carries, 83.5 rushing yards per game, possibly volumes even better now based on what Deion Jackson did. Every beat writer is saying he's going to be the clear RB1 this week. Injury experts saying he should be close to 100%. And this was just a season ago, the league's worst run defense. We talk about run funnels, right? By schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed, the Jets were top 5 against the pass and then below average against the run funnel. We went over this together, Neil. It's like, this was the worst I've ever seen, where they were dead last against the run and best in the league against the pass. And so, I mean, like, there's a brand new head coach who's a great defensive mind, totally mixed up the scheme. So like, but I'm just saying, and like, this is a guy who's super cheap, 4,700.
Yep, that's a great call. It hurts me to my core because I drafted so much Evan Hall, and then he got hurt right away, and who knows if he was going to be involved anyway. But like, this was his opportunity. It's clearly like early in the year with Jonathan Taylor out, and then Evan Hall is out. So you, I guess you won that battle if you were drafting a ton of Zach Moss. I did not draft a ton of Zach Moss.
I mean, Richardson's probably just going to cuck him at the goal line like every chance he can get, but it was just he was free.
I kind of,
and like, now he's cheap and no one's playing him.
I think part of it for me is the broken hand, that I was just like, he's probably going to miss more time than we're anticipating, or like, and one of these other guys is going to take it off. I don't know. It's kind of the fear of the unknown, I think, led me more toward Evan Hall than Zach Moss, because I was like, he might be out for the first 6 weeks of the year, and who knows what he'll do after that. But then it turns out he's back week 2, and looks like could be in line as a great play there. Mr. TD says he's playing Moss in redraft. He's a viable play, depending on, like, probably not in a 10-team league. I don't know. Would you play him in a 10-team league?
Unless that team is really bad, probably not.
Yeah, not somebody that I'm dying to play, but he's priced right in DFS and should have opportunities. All right, so you really like Zach Moss. Actually, let me go back to what about Patrick Taylor? Any interest in with Aaron Jones presumably out? We're going to have Patrick Taylor as the RB2. Man, I just don't think AJ Dillon is any good. But do you want to be playing any Patrick Taylor against the Falcons here?
No, absolutely not. I mean, there's a chance AJ Dillon gets all the work. Like, I know he's terrible, but like, he's clearly ahead of Patrick Taylor. And then if, it is a committee, it's still like a committee on an offense we're not too excited about, with a guy who's a total unknown.
Right.
So not really.
All right. So no,
I mean, like, he's totally not in play for me. Yeah.
And when we've got, we already have Zach Moss cheap enough. Like, we've got some other viable guys who are pretty cheap here, so no real need. Good to see.
I mean, the best argument for Moss, let me just reiterate, is like, you needed the high price guys who like went nuclear, and like, he just, doesn't screw up and like gets there on volume.
Yep. Alexander says, seems like every backfield is split this year. And then he asks, is there a bell cow? And Mr. TD says, let's check the report. So we looked at it a little bit already. Is this a free report, or do people have to pay for the bell cow report? Do you know off the top of your head?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, this is one you got to pay for.
Okay.
So the best stats to look at for running backs is like, you really want to be chasing volume. That's the most important thing. You look at snap share right here. That's great. And it's like, yeah, CMC, Connor, Josh Jacobs, Etienne, where Etienne loses some ground. At least like last year, he lost ground by target share, but he had that last week. He lost all of the goal line work to Tank Bigsby last week. Right. And that'll show up in expected fantasy points, which is this all encompassing stat that looks at every carry by down and distance from the end zone, every target by air yards, distance from the end zone. And so like, obviously carries inside the 10 are worth a lot of expected fantasy points. And you can hit XFP market share. You can hit XF. Yeah.
Sure.
And so obviously like Etienne doesn't rank as highly. I also look at it by backfield XFP share. We haven't added that yet, but this is team XFP share. And if you'll notice, it's like the 2 Atlanta running backs at the top, which just shows you like just how RB centric this Atlanta offense is. They just don't pass. When they do pass, it's like an 8 out of 5 at most. And not a lot of plays. So like, yeah.
All right.
But Tony Pollard, number 4. And
Tony,
projects to be a similar game this week.
Has the talent, has apparently a run funnel matchup. I've never thought of the Jets as being a run funnel, but yeah, I guess if they're, it's slightly better against the pass. I think they're good in both aspects, but yeah, doesn't mean they can't be a run funnel. Interesting. So Tony Pollard, all right. So you tease that you have a million of these running backs who are not getting a ton of ownership. Who else besides Zach Moss? Who else do we want to talk about?
Yeah, here? I got one more. We hit on Gibbs as well.
Oh, that's right.
But there's a bunch of guys in the top 15 who I like, but Isaiah Pacheco, I don't know where you have
potentially him. Out. Yeah, we've got him at 3% ownership.
I think CH is definitely going to miss. CH got the start last week, but I think that's just because Pacheco missed just about all of the end of training camp. But he had the best volume in the backfield. He was definitely the most effective running back. He had a career high in targets. He had twice as many targets as Jerick McKinnon. After last week's disaster, I could see the Chiefs kind of leaning on the run game a little bit more. Highest implied points total of the slate. No one's going to play him, but that's just the argument for him. But like, how often does a Chiefs running back, win you a tournament?
Yeah, good point. Could happen. Hasn't happened a ton. How often has any Chief outside of Mahomes or Kelsey won you a tournament the past couple of years? Just been, man, I played so many of the Chiefs receivers over like last year. It was just like, somebody's got to do it. One of these weeks, like you get MVS down to like 3,500, like all these guys, like every single Chiefs receiver is cheap. And then somehow none of them hit. And Patrick Mahomes still puts up a lot of points.
I've seen them win some tournaments, but it's always like a lineup that just looks like it was some guy who like went all in on the Chiefs and then hit the button to randomize the stack.
Yep.
McKinnon, McKinnon was in there quite a bit.
Oh, that's a good point from Adam Baum Mother. McKinnon was very good. He was definitely a stack partner of Mahomes. That was one of the most painful things for me last week was McKinnon just doing nothing. Like he started off, gets a reception like the first drive, and then the rest of the game like was just not on the field as far as I could tell. I guess I haven't double checked if that's true, but I believe that he was barely on the field the rest of the game. And he's a guy that I had a ton of in best ball. So that was one thing that did not go well for me at all last week. Do you think McKinnon is back in play this week?
For Mahomes stacks, yeah, sure. I just think Pacheco is like a better play.
Yeah, just like independently if you're just playing a running back in a non-stack. What about these Baltimore running backs? Let's talk a little bit. We got Gus Edwards and then Justice Hill. Are either of them in play for you this week?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe I have to wait and see like where it's one of those things. It's like the reason they're not in play is because regardless of how it shakes out, like even if we learn that that Gus Edwards is going to get like 85% of the workload, like be elite from a workload standpoint, my guess is that the volume is not necessarily going to be there for the running backs. And clearly he's not involved in the passing game at all. It's a little bit tough. And neither of them are actually that cheap either. So we got Justice Hill, 4,900. Gus Edwards, I think was like 5,000, 5,300. Yeah, it's a little bit asking a bit much for those guys, but they're a little bit interesting to me. Gus Edwards, he's averaging like over 5 yards per carry for his career. So I guess there's that going for him. All right. Any other running backs you want to talk about here?
Can you pull up don't move to Texas's last comment?
1 second. Yes,
I just thought it was a great take. He said they lost because they didn't get McKinnon the ball more. I believe that. I mean, that's like a really compelling narrative I haven't heard until just now. It's like, hey, their wide receivers stink.
Right.
Travis Kelce is not close to 100%. And so, like, why not just lean heavy on McKinnon? Why not like have him split out wide as a wide receiver? I think that's a really interesting take.
I gotta say, that was the reason I played a ton of McKinnon in Showdown. I was like, man, this is like the ultimate Showdown play with Kelce out. They're gonna need to throw the ball to somebody. He's like, they have such a great connection. He's gonna be out there. He's gonna be targeted by Mahomes, and it looked good early on. I was like, all right, this is going exactly as planned. And then it was like, oh, nope, not the rest of the game. Barely did anything. So that was disappointing for me. All right, let's see. Do I have any other running backs that I want to ask you about before we move on? We've already been here an hour. This show flies by so quickly, Scott. I did not realize how deep into it we are already. So we'll go quickly. I wanted to ask you just briefly about is Kyren Williams in play yet? I guess probably not against the Niners. It's kind of a tough matchup.
Yeah.
Is that
he's going to outscore Cam Akers for sure? But
yeah, but he's not in this matchup. No need to get there. All right. I think that'll do it for running backs, unless I'll throw it back to you one more time. Any other running backs that you want to touch on before we move on to wide receivers?
No, let's move on.
All right, we will move on to talk about some wide receivers. We'll start by talking about the chalk. So our highest owned receivers, and we have several above 10%, starting with Amon-Ra St. Brown, followed by Diggs, Devontae, Calvin Ridley, Jamar Chase, Keenan Allen, Puka Nacua, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, and Mike Williams, all getting double-digit ownership here. So let's start with fades. Anybody who's getting double-digit ownership that you just have no interest in?
Here's how I wrote it up for my article for Cash. Puka 1, Stephon Diggs 2, Calvin Ridley 3, Keenan Allen 4, Jahan Dotson 5, Devontae Adams 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown 7.
Okay. So you have Amon-Ra. That's your level of interest?
That's how I'd rank them for if you were building. I mean, it's hard because like some of these guys are way different in price, but like with Amon-Ra, it's like not that hard because, you know, he's 200 more than Adams. He's 500 more than Keenan. He's 400 more than Ridley. He's 200 less than Diggs. I would definitely, I think Diggs is a much better. I love Amon-Ra. It's just, I don't know. He's going up against zone. He's significantly worse against zone. Seattle was like a really tough matchup last year, but I mean, I get that they were horrible last week. I just really like Adams, Keenan, Ridley, Diggs. I can make a compelling case for all of them, and I think they have more upside as well for tournaments. Like I'm not saying St. Brown is in the Keenan tier of like so dependable, but like rarely posts a have to have it score, but he's like on the spectrum a little bit.
Okay.
But I like it. I mean, like I just wouldn't put him 1.
Did you say Puka number 1?
Yeah. Is he not there?
No, I
well, this is for Cash. I mean, this is for like, I don't think you're fading the guy who saw Cooper Kupp usage in his NFL debut and looked as good as he did, and he's priced 100 cheaper than Isaiah Hodgins. So I just assumed he was like a cash lock, and I didn't really disagree with it. For tournaments, I mean, like it's easy to fade. You know, you could just say it was like a blip or an outlier event or something like that. But
okay. Adam Baumgartner says you got to bump Keenan with Eckler doubtful. I believe Eckler has been actually ruled out at this point. Is that much of a boost for Keenan Allen with Eckler out for you?
Yeah, I think that's worth a legitimate boost. But more than anything, it's just that like all offseason, they were saying Kellen Moore and Keenan Allen were saying he was going to play the CeeDee Lamb role in the offense. That certainly appears to be the case. Like really good volume last week. It was a little hard to tell because he had 3 targets negated due to penalty, but he ranked 5th among wide receivers in XFP, 32% target share, 12 targets in total. And the Titans have the worst secondary in football. He ranks second worst in fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers after ranking dead last year. I think he's an awesome play for cash, is what I was saying. But like, the counter argument is like, historically, he doesn't post those had to have it scores that Stephon Diggs or
right.
Adams has, but it is a new offense. He is in a new system, so
could change. Yeah, maybe the historical data doesn't match up with what's going to happen. Well, I mean, it's too early to tell at this point if things are going to change there. All right, I know you said that you have a lot of contrarian options that you like. Who do you like that's contrarian at wide receiver?
Well, Jahan Dotson's one.
Oh yeah, I mean, you mentioned Jahan Dotson already. All right, so tell me what you love about Jahan Dotson, because that was not the first name I expected you to say there.
Well, he's only 4,900, which means he's the exact same price as Puka Nacua, who's pretty chalky.
Yep, that's great.
So that's good leverage there. He was being drafted top 35 in season-long leagues all offseason for a reason, right?
Yep.
Terry McLaurin's not 100%. And McLaurin's going to be in a worst possible matchup against Patrick Surtain. Dotson, meanwhile, gets Damari Mathis, who's the guy that Jacoby Myers just roasted for 29 plus fantasy points. But he's also a player who is significantly better against man coverage than zone. Since the start of last season, he ranks 9th in fantasy points per route run against man coverage. Against zone, he ranks 15th worst of 89 qualifiers. Jacoby Myers ranks directly ahead of him on that man list. Like, they're kind of very similar, do much better against man. And so Denver plays man at one of the highest rates in the league. He's going to be facing off against Mathis, who was just destroyed by, 2 touchdowns for a guy who never scores touchdown and all that. So, I think he's an awesome GP. He's my Brandon Ayuk this week.
Love it. All right. I did not realize he's only 4,900. That seems just objectively just like too low of a price tag for Jahan.
I mean, I'm talking about him in cash, and it's like, what's his projected ownership?
2.8%, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, 2.8%.
Either I'm just like an idiot, and you guys can tell me I'm an idiot, but like I said, I got spicy takes this week, and I don't always, but this week I see a lot.
Yeah, it's a great call. We got Surtain on Scary Terry. There's just one more reason to like Dotson. Really interesting. It's a great contrarian call that honestly was not really somebody that I had thought about much. But now that you say him, now that you bring him up, I'm thinking, yeah, it's a really good call out there for Jahan Dotson. All right, who else? Who else do we want to talk about who is not getting much ownership here?
Contrarian plays. There's a lot I like. I'm just struggling to make this argument, and it's like literally unironically Kadarius Toney.
You love your Kadarius Toney. Did you love him all offseason too?
I did. Yeah.
Guys? Okay.
I might just be an idiot. I get very, just could be dead wrong. And this is like one of my worst takes ever. But it's just, Jeremy Fowler has said all offseason is like the Chiefs think he's their new Tyreek Hill. They think he's their new wide receiver one. They want him to be a featured guy. And he said that right after the game when Kadarius dropped, 5 more targets than he did all of college. Explosive playmaker. His usage was legitimately great last week on a per route basis. He just people don't really he had 5 targets on 8 routes. And it's like, okay, well, now he can get a full-time workload because he practiced in full for the first time in months. Patrick Mahomes has said, I still have confidence. We're going to work out the bugs. And 4,600, 0.1% projected ownership. Do
you see what I have pulled up here though, Scott?
Yeah.
What I'm using as my counterpoint. I'm using your own data against you. Is this a concern for you, the matchup with Tyson Campbell?
No, because it's not a shadow situation. And look at Kadarius Toney, 33% left, 33% slot, 33% right, which means they move him all around the formation. So he's never going to be up against just one cornerback the entire time. I mean, Jacksonville's cornerbacks are good. Don't get me wrong, but it's also part of the thesis in playing Kadarius is he gets a lot of schemed usage, a lot of screens, backfield routes, even negative ADOT throws. But most importantly, is that he gets the shovel pass touchdowns. Like Patrick Mahomes has like 3 times as many shovel pass touchdowns as like any other team in the NFL. And that should be Tony, who's like so freakish after the catch. But again, this is like a galaxy brain play. You don't have to tell me like I could just be dead wrong on Tony. I'm just like usually not as badly. I mean, I expected him to do nothing week 1. I didn't expect him to have like the worst graded game in PFF history, but
yeah, that was a pretty brutal game. But I mean, there's also like, if you want to go down narrative street, like sometimes the quarterback will be like, all right, you screwed up so badly the last game.
Right.
I'm gonna force the ball to you to get you right. If you, I don't know, neither you nor I are like super into going down narrative streets, but like I'm not opposed to for NFL more so than like MLB. I'm okay with sometimes,
I think the Chiefs know that if they're going to get to where they want to go, they're going to need to get this guy right.
Yeah. And we've got him projected for less than 1% ownership. I think everybody in the world watched that game. I think that less than 1% ownership is probably right. So I can see the case you're making for Kadarius. So I think that is a galaxy brain play that I can get behind. I'm liking these wide receiver calls here that you're making. Any others that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, for sure. Christian Kirk. So like Christian Kirk was one of my biggest fades all off season. Or at least after I watched the first few weeks of preseason, because it was clear that they were pulling Kirk in 2 wide receiver sets. And like, that's really all of where Kirk's value came from, is he ran the 5th most routes in the NFL last year. And he still like only finished 24th in fantasy points per game as the wide receiver 1 on a Trevor Lawrence offense, like just barely ahead of Zay Jones, who's now working above him. But here's the thing is like, I like to reference man zone splits because like they've paid off pretty well for me in DFS over the years. And Graham Barfield, like my colleague, has always said, Kirk is the man beater for Doug Peterson. And literally Doug Peterson said that a couple of days ago. You can check out my Twitter for the tweet, but he was like, Kirk thrives against man defense. He's going to do well this week. And like, so since the start of last season, Kirk ranks 4th best in fantasy points per route run against man, 58th best against zone of 88 qualifiers. Last week, Colts 11th lowest rate of man. This week, Chiefs 8th highest. And you don't have to look too far to last season when Kirk averaged 13 targets, 8.5 receptions, and 26.7 fantasy points per game against the Jaguars. Calvin Ridley is one of the chalkiest plays of the slate. He's a great play. Calvin Ridley's awesome, but this is good leverage.
5,100. 3.4% projected ownership. That's a great call. And I forget you just read the coach's quote, but I thought that was promising. With that said, though, what about any interest in Zay Jones?
Yeah, so that's part of the problem too. Is like, I said in my recap article, I wouldn't be surprised if Zay Jones outscores Christian Kirk by season's end. I do give a strong lead to Kirk just based on what Doug Peterson has come out to said and what we've known to be true and his history against the Chiefs. I think that's my lean. I will say Chiefs slot corner is really good. And, if he's now only in the slot, it is a little worrisome, but like, this is a guy who, contrarian ownership.
Okay. Yeah, no, very low owned. And I guess Zay Jones coming in with higher projected ownership than I was expecting at 9%. So you don't get the same kind of ownership discount there on Zay Jones that you get from Christian Kirk. I like that call out too. Yeah, you're I'm liking these. I'm liking these contrarian.
I got more
calls.
for you.
Yeah, let's bring them on.
All right. So DJ Moore, what was his ownership? I hyped him up earlier for you.
Yes, you did. Let's see. Where do we have DJ? We've got him at 2.2%.
Another great one. Gabe Davis. What about him? I know we talked about him as well.
He was pretty low also. Yeah, I like that call too. Where are you, Gabe? There we go. Gabe Davis, 1.3%.
Yeah, that's all the guy does is break slates when no one's on him. What about Tank Dell?
Tank Dell, 0.9%.
Yeah, great play. Yeah, 3,200. He ran a route on only 42% of the team's dropbacks last week. But Noah Brown now on IR. D'Amico Ryans gassed him up, promised us he'd see more work in week 2. I know CJ Stroud, you have that shoulder injury. Theoretically, that could help him because his ADOT would shrink, or even if Davis Mills comes back, Davis Mills targeted Chris Moore like way more than he should have. He was their slot wide receiver last year. He's basically like Zay Flowers 2.0 in my opinion. There's not too much of a difference between the two players. He's just a lot cheaper, but also like more uncertainty. Like Zay Flowers was like the clear wide receiver one last week, but it's just like I could see like a lot of just easy screens to Tank Dell, which was like 90% of what Zay Flowers did last week.
And 3,200, the price tag is pretty nice there on Tank Dell. Like that call out.
Last one I got for you is either Treylon Burks or Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I'm not really super about it, but because I'm a Burks hater, like I kind of think NWI, as bad as he is just a little tiny, minuscule bit interesting. Even if he does stink, he's 3,300.
I didn't know that you were a Burks hater. What's the what's your hatred for Burks about?
This is just like dates back to when he was coming out of college. I just thought there were a lot of people in like the dynasty streets who's like, he's the wide receiver one in the class. And I'm like, Drake London's significantly better. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, significantly better. A lot of fraudulent production that I think people weren't taking into account. And he's just like never impressed me. Like I'm a big Chig guy. Chig had 7 more receiving yards than Burks last year and like 77 fewer routes run. I mean, our guy, Brett Whitefield, who's a film expert, his comp for him was Jonnu Smith for Treylon Burks. The tape I didn't think was good either, but you never know. You know, the volume should be there and very athletic. You know, maybe he's really improved his game, but I mean, Westbrook-Ikhine had 7 targets to Burks' 3 last week and is 1,200 cheaper. But yeah, I mean, like, why are we excited about a Titans passing attack?
Yeah, Chris Ostro points.
Yeah, that's right. But it's like 1 out of every 20 games.
Right. Which is better than the ownership is going to be. So maybe some positive leverage if you expect it.
There you go. That's smart.
Hamburger says jumping in late. Well, thank you for joining us when you can, Hamburger. And for those of you who are coming in late, please do like the video if you haven't already done so. It really does help us with the YouTube algorithm if you like the video. And of course, if you want to find all of these neat pages you're looking at, they should be in the description of this video. I think that we just have a generic fantasy points link in there right now, Scott, but it's pretty easy to navigate the fantasy points if you want to check out all these, what we're looking at right here. So right now, what we're looking at is wide receiver cornerback matchup. You can find that under research and news down here, wide receiver cornerback matchups. And then of course, we've been looking at the bell cow report, which is part of the fantasy points data suite, which you can find pretty easily on the main suite. It's right here. It's brand new, very, very exciting new tool. I know that you were very excited about the fantasy points data suite coming out. Anything that you want to give a little sell on the fantasy points data suite, because I think that it's a fantastic tool, Scott. I think it has so much information that people who love digging deep into NFL stats, you can find everything you need that's fantasy relevant in the fantasy points data suite. But anything else that you feel we should say about the fantasy points data suite?
Yeah, fantasypoints.com. I think we're the best, football only site in the game by far. We also do college football, and that product's incredible. And now we have the best data in the game. We have fantasy points data, which gives you more access to accurate advanced analytics than anyone else in the game, by far the best. Exponential offerings once you factor in all of our various filters and splits and customization that no one else offers. If you want to just go into like advanced passing, for instance, and scroll through the various columns and then the various filters and split options, you can export to CSV and weeks, different scoring settings, all that stuff. But yeah, right now we're doing a promo code Gurific25 for 25% off. So our standard package is $60. Our premium, NFL premium plus college football, is only $150 per year.
Per year. $60 per year is, man.
Dude, isn't that stupid? Everyone I've talked to is just like, you should have went like,
that was not me selling. I legitimately thought you were talking about per month. That's a great deal.
No, I know, like, honestly, it's a mistake because like we wanted to just be like the best site and also the best on price. But I feel like there's like this subconscious thing where it's like, oh, it's cheap, so it's not. It's a Rolex at Timex prices.
Right.
But like, I think that's hurt us over the years. But anyway, 150 per year for NFL premium plus college football. That's DFS and betting for both. Standard is $60 per year. Data suite is 75% off, just $50 per year. And again, it's the best. Like it's better data, NFL data, than anyone else offers. Really believe that. So Gurific 25. Let me just spell that out for you.
All right. Yeah.
GURRIFIC 25.
Gurific
like terrific.
Yep.
It's because John Hanson's the fantasy guru, like the OG.
Right. Okay. Guru. That makes sense. All right. Yeah, it's a fantastic tool. You should check that out. And of course, you're on the Stochastic channel right now. I mean, I guess you're going to be posting this, I assume, on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel as well. So you can find the links for all the Stochastic stuff there. But we do all of the DFS sports, and you can find our tools here. I mean, we have primarily DFS stuff on our site, and you can find all of our. I believe so. On the other hand, we have the best DFS specific tools on the market. I've been using them. I've had a lot of success using the Stochastic tools. Highly recommend checking these out as well. And you can get them for 15% off using promo code. I believe that it is kickoff15. You can also, it's just in link in the description of the video. So check out all of our various offerings. I love doing the show with you, Scott, because I feel like we're just combining so much powerful data from the Stochastic team, the Fantasy Points team. It's really cool to be able to talk about this and look at all of the data and kind of look at it together. Really, really fun to do so. But we should probably get back to talking about the show. We're already an hour and a half in, Scott. I think you and I could talk for 4 hours easily on this stuff if we really wanted to. We're gonna try and keep it to under 2 hours. I was trying to keep it under an hour and a half. We're already too late for that. But all right, wide receiver.
Tight ends.
Oh no, we're just jumping it. I was just going to give you one last chance. Any other wide receivers that you want to call out?
No, I think we're good.
We've done a lot of them. All right, we'll move on to tight ends. All right, tight ends. The chalk is Kelsey and it's Luke Musgrave. The Packers, I think, are going to be without Christian Watson. I'm not sure if that is confirmed, but it seems to be that is the direction that things seem to be headed. So we have Kelsey at 16% ownership, Musgrave at 11%. Are either of these guys a fade for you?
Yeah. So last week I said I'm all in on Luke Musgrave. He just missed an 11-point play. He led the position in air yards.
That was rough.
Really good usage. I ended up going all in on Isaiah Likely too. And either way, it would have been stupid because we know tight end is one of the most volatile positions, especially sub 3,500 tight ends. So just mix up exposure. What an idiot I was for doing that. I'm not going to make the same mistake this week. I have Zach Ertz as the number one cash tight end on DraftKings. I don't think it's particularly close. But I do have Travis Kelce as the number one tournament tight end. But you have to, what my biggest takeaway from watching that Chiefs game, which is such a disaster with the wide receivers, is just Kelce's going to come back and get 1 million targets. But I mean, if you want to fade him for GPPs, it's pretty simple. It's he's probably not going to be 100%. He could just be out there full on decoy hobbling around. We don't know. True. But I mean, if Kelce is far and away number one at 7,600, you should also think about Mark Andrews at 6,300. And I think according to your projections, he's sub 2%. So he's someone to keep in mind, but it's not just him. 4%. Okay. What about 4%. Darren Waller?
Darren Waller, I should just go by fantasy points or salary. Darren Waller, we've got 2.5% projected ownership.
Exactly. So it's the same. I mean, the guy had a 50% target share in the preseason. That's what we saw last week on a small sample. He didn't play the full complement of routes because maybe it was just a blowout. Maybe the hamstring was bothering him, but he's now this was my number one must draft tight end. So it's not looking great for me with his hamstring injury, but he's saying he's not going to be impacted at all. Stefania Bell, an injury expert over at ESPN, has said I don't think he's going to be impacted at all. This is the defense that gave up the most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends last year, and no one's playing him. I think that's a little silly. I really I'm going basically in order here, guys. Chigo Okonkwo, I really like. One of my guys, he flopped last week, but the Saints have been the best defense against tight ends for a number of years now. His usage was great. Chargers just got gashed through the air. I think he's the best pass catcher on the team because I am a Treylon Burks hater. So hopefully the increase in route share comes with some targets this week. Just a player I really like, really feel convicted in. And then Logan Thomas as well. It was Ron Rivera said all offseason, yeah, Logan Thomas is our Travis Kelce. Tight ends are so important to this Eric Bieniemy offense and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, the guy missed basically all of training camp, but in week 1, he saw a team high 8 targets, 0.55 XFP per route run. That ranked tied with Jamar Chase, second among tight ends. And that was with, kind of a limited route share that maybe that jumps this week. Like I said, McLaurin's in a bad spot. He's not healthy. So this could be a guy to blow up my Jahan Dotson call. I mean, I don't think he's good. I just think, target volume is going to be there in 3,100.
You poo-pooed Sam Howell, and yet you're all in on Jahan Dotson and you're sitting Logan Thomas. Come on. You got to have some interest in Sam Howell.
Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what you needed to win this week was Logan Thomas plus Jahan Dotson plus Sam Howell. And I just
exactly. That's what you need.
You might have saved me.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm doing my best here. All right. Yeah, I like a lot of these tight ends this week. A lot of good call outs there. I do want to ask you about the Bills because I mean both Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox were just out there a ton last week for the Bills. For those of us who are interested in playing some Bills stacks, I mean, I think it makes some sense to add these tight ends into the mix. What do you think of Dalton Kincaid and or Dawson Knox?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you have 2 tight ends on the same team. They're just cannibalizing each other's production. Granted, Buffalo did run a super high rate of 12 personnel, but that could have just been what they did in week 1, which would make sense against this Jets defense that's more vulnerable to tight ends than they are to wide receivers. But I mean, neither tight end saw Logan Thomas as usage or volume or Luke Musgrave even, or Zach Ertz for sure. So,
but a better offense. So that would be the counterpoint is, they're not getting quite the same share, but better, lesser share and a much better offense, is kind of the.
No, you're right. And hey, Sean McDermott called out Gabe Davis. We need someone to step up as the number 2. Maybe that's Dalton Kincaid. I kind of resign myself already to Diggs plus Davis, but okay. That could definitely be what wins it for you.
All right, just wanted to throw those names out there because I think as somebody who I think I'm going to be playing some Buffalo, I have some interest in those tight ends at relatively inexpensive price tags in a nice matchup. What about Evan Ingram against Kansas City's defense?
I mean, I like Ridley and I like Kirk, and that's just kind of how I'm doing. If he blows it up for me, that would suck. But
yeah. All right. Any other tight ends that you want to talk about, or should we? I guess we didn't really talk about defenses last week, and I think that you would have been in on the Arizona defense if I remember our conversation.
I didn't think of it, but
gotcha.
2 quarters into it, I'm like, what a smart contrarian play.
Yeah.
The highest owned, and it's we're really confident in Sam Howell. Who was it? Who was the chalky defense? It was Washington, right?
It was Washington against Arizona.
Yeah. And it's no, that would have been so smart. Massive leverage. Yeah, I didn't get there, but I thought it was good.
Okay. Well, we're going to try and close out the show within 5 minutes. I do want to build a lineup. We did it last week. I think it made sense to build one more lineup. I'll ask you this question that Rick is asking: would you drop Christian Kirk for Zay Jones or Elijah Moore? What do you think, Scott?
Well, you just asked the world's biggest Elijah Moore stan, so I would do that. But you might be able to just wait a week and sell him and then pick up Elijah. I don't know.
All right. Do you have anything that you want to say about defenses? I mean, we honestly on these shows we typically just don't even talk about the defenses all that much. Don't play your defense against your quarterback on a main slate. But I don't know. The Cowboys are clearly too cheap. Oh, I thought they were.
No,
2,700. They're 4,000. Who am I thinking of?
They were 2,700. That would be.
Oh, the Jets are 2,700. The Jets are 2,700. Yeah. Okay. Who are also.
Oh, interesting.
It would have been better if it was the Cowboys at 2,700 against Zach Wilson, but I think the Jets at 2,700 against Dak is also. Lofty pointed this out on Twitter is why I knew the price tag off the top of my head. Still a great spot for the Jets against Dak and the Dallas offense, I think. Any strong takes on defenses? Or are you ready to build a lineup?
No, I really haven't dug into it yet. I got to build my own lineups.
All right. Well, then Scott and I are going to build one lineup here on DraftKings, and I'll let you choose the quarterback, Scott.
No, I want you to choose it.
You want me to choose the
Well,
quarterback?
first you have to say what is this going to be? Is this going to be
This
a
is for a
millie
millie
maker?
maker. This is I'm entering a millie maker lineup
Okay.
here.
You pick the quarterback. I can get like 2 or more picks after that.
All right. We'll do a snake draft. I pick the quarterback. You get the next 2 picks.
Okay.
All right. Let's do it. All right. I am gonna go with. I said I would play Josh Allen as my number 1 stack, but I'm not going to do it here for this millie maker lineup. I'm going to do something more interesting here. I'm going to. We both kind of liked him, so I'm going to go with Daniel Jones.
Can you just check Slayton's price for me?
Yep. I don't. Oh, here. 4,400.
Him and according to the data suite, him and Paris Campbell were the clear 1 and 2. The issue is like the most viable guys are pass catchers, non-running backs would be the tight ends.
We don't have to wide receiver. We could do Giants tight end and.
I deleted one guy from my article, and it was Marquise Brown, and it's just because Josh Dobbs is like the most has never thrown a deep target in his life.
Oh, really?
But there were a lot of things pointing at him as like underrated. I think the biggest issue with this is like he's hard to stack, but maybe that's why he's as low owned as he is.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the running backs then? Saquon Barkley, do you think were they positively correlated last year? I have a sheet that
I haven't dug in either. But like clearly within a single game sample, like there's the possibility of a receiving touchdown for Saquon Barkley is obviously within the realm. So I don't hate the idea of stacking, doing a double stack with no wide receivers, doing a tight end running back double stack with Daniel Jones. Honestly, I don't hate.
What are the Giants defense at?
Giants defense. That was something that I was surprised to see how often when I was looking at the lineup generator, I got the quarterback with the defense because I think of them as being negatively correlated. Here it is, 3,800.
I don't know. You threw me for a loop for this. I feel like now I'm not going to have exposure to Daniel Jones just because I don't like the stacks here. But yeah, let's play Waller, super low owned.
Yep.
And I don't think I'm going to force anything with Arizona. I don't think I'm going to force anything beyond that. I think you could play Barkley theoretically. You could play Barkley plus Giants defense plus Waller plus Jones. And maybe that's the better play than Waller. Honestly, I don't know. You really threw me for a loop for this one. And let's just throw Dotson in here because that was one of the guys I called.
All right, Jahan Dotson, 4,900. Throwing him in there. All right.
Now it's your turn.
Now it is my turn. All right. I say we do Gabe Davis. We're not doing the full stack of Buffalo in this one, but I still think Gabe Davis makes sense.
All right, here's what I want you to do for me. Pull up ownership projections again.
Yep.
All positions. Let's see if we can get like a little crazy here and look for some good leverage.
Okay.
You want to go Debo to get leverage off of McCaffrey?
Yeah, we could do some Debo. He was what, 5,600?
Yeah.
Did I miss him? Debo Sam, there he is. Okay.
And then running back. I don't know if you think your Joshua Kelly ownership projection is. What about Pollard?
Pollard. All right.
Are we getting too expensive now?
Well, we still have the defense to go. We can go with a pretty cheap defense if we want. We could actually do the Jets defense at 2,700. Might make sense. I guess we don't want to do Jets against Tony Pollard probably, but if we do that, then we have 4,900 left over per player, and that's with. I mean, we could go for a defense right now.
Scroll all the way down to defense.
We got Raiders so we're not doing Raiders. I don't think.
I would not. I think they're probably a top 5 defense on the slate.
The Raiders.
Yeah,
but I don't think I want to play them against Gabe Davis. We could
No, I think it makes sense. So Josh Allen had 5 turnovers last week. 5 turnovers last week against zone coverage, which Raiders play predominantly. Last year, 10 touchdowns to only 10 interceptions. Gabe Davis is what? Their deep threat. Raiders led the league in passing touchdowns allowed on deep passes. That's Gabe Davis's skill set, and deep threats thrive in negative game script. You know, you're playing from behind. You really need those big chunk plays. This is maybe a little too galaxy brain, but I like that, and
this is a Millie Maker. There's no two galaxy brain in a contest this size. All right, let's do it. We're doing it. We're playing Raiders against Gabe Davis. We're YOLOing. Now we have 62.50 left over with 2 positions remaining. So we could go Josh Kelly. We could go down to Zach Moss if we wanted to. We don't need to go that cheap.
So let's see the 3 different lineups we can build between Kelly, Moss, and CMC.
All right, so it's Kelly. Then we can play a 7,500 in the flex. So it could be Derrick Henry against the Chargers, I think would be, or Calvin Ridley. Or even, Josh Jacobs correlates, I think, pretty well with the Raiders defense. So it'd probably be one of those 3, I would think, if we were going to go the Kelly route.
I'm not saying the Raiders are going to win. I'm just saying Josh Allen had 5 turnovers last week.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. So that's what we could do with Kelly. Now, if we throw in Zach Moss instead, then we would have 7,800. So then we would be able to play Amon-Ra St. Brown in that lineup, or Devontae Adams. And then if we went to McCaffrey, it would be 3,600 left over in the flex.
We could play Zach Ertz.
We could play Paris Campbell, throw in the double stack with Daniel Jones if we wanted to.
Okay. He led the team in routes last week.
What do you think of that? Or Ertz is the ring back.
Let me just see if Tank Dell we could play, Nick Westbrook, Akina we could play. I guess for the stack it would be Paris or Ertz on the bring back. I think I like Ertz more, to be as much as I hate
double.
I don't know, actually. I don't know. Like, what do you think?
I think I would be more inclined to do double stack with Daniel Jones than the bring back with Ertz. But honestly,
I think part of the reason you're playing Jones is for the rushing upside.
True.
So, like, I don't know how much I really trust his arm, but Ertz had 10 plus targets, but it's like, does he have the ceiling of Paris? I don't know. I just kind of think Paris Campbell sucks. Let's see what he's done. Check the data suite. That's what you can do for me.
Oh yeah, I can.
Advanced receiving, if you don't mind.
Yep, I guess already.
Yeah, Paris Campbell had 2 catches last week. 2 yards, not even 2 catches.
Okay. All right. So what am I looking up here? Or did you already look it up for me?
I would type in Giants into team. Paris Campbell, 4 targets, 16 air yards. Yeah. So I was just hoping that one of his 4 targets, he didn't catch 3 of them, was a deep target. Maybe Daniel Jones just didn't have the time to even attempt that. That's probably true, but that's enough to have me lean Ertz. Like, now type in here, just exit out, and then
exit out.
Like where you wrote Giants.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. Okay. We're going back to advanced receiving.
Yeah, and then just set the position for tight end. Or actually, you don't even hit qualifier, or like the filter to the left. Sorry.
Filter over here. Which one?
Yeah, that one right there. And then qualifier. And then minimum routes do 20, 25, whatever it is. Yeah, 25. And then hit apply.
Apply. Where is that?
Top right in the green.
Top right. Oh, there. I see it.
I know this is tricky. Sorry.
No,
you're doing a good job.
Thank you. All right. Is it? Okay. Good.
Yeah, and then scroll all the way to the right, and then click on XFP per route run. So that's expected fantasy points per route run, and it's Tyreek Hill 1, Puka Nacua 2, Zach Ertz 3, Devontae Adams 4, Calvin Ridley 5. Josh Dobbs is like never thrown a deep ball in his life.
Yeah.
All he does is check down, check down, check down. Zach Ertz, like the best usage and volume of any tight end last week. And believe it or not, he's had double-digit targets in 9 of his last, 15 healthy games with the Cardinals. I don't know. I tweeted it out, but it's like, that's more than Travis Kelce. He averages 9 fantasy targets per game over that span. Tight end 5 production. Maybe he scores a touchdown. We'll see. Or maybe he just catches all 10 targets.
All right. Let's do it. Let's do Zach Ertz. Throw him in there. We got the bring back. We got our single stack with the bring back with Zach Ertz.
All right. When this wins, what do you think the combinatorial ownership is on this?
This is going to be like 60% combinatorial. Like there's nobody who's all that chalky here, is there? I mean, yeah, it's going to be low.
Well, nice.
I like it. All right, we're doing it. Entered into the Millie. That is our Millie winning lineup. All right, Scott.
JM to win always says you either want to be finishing all the way to the left or all the way to the right. And I feel like that's one of those lineups.
Absolutely. That one could get absolutely crushed. I will say the Giants, part of the reason I like the Giants this week, I think it's been undersold how much like the rain can really affect a game. So like the fact that they're playing the Cowboys defense, just an absolutely awful spot, and then it's raining on top. I think they were just completely out of sorts. I know that people are expecting some negative regression for the Giants coming off last year, but like I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last week. I think that was a fluky situation against a great defense in the rain. So I think that this Giants offense is going to be better than we saw. Obviously, it's going to be better than we saw last week, but I think that they're still going to be like they're going to have some spike weeks.
Yeah, just for the folks at home, you really do want to see Andrew Thomas playing this week. I do think that's really important.
Yeah, fair point. All right, Scott. Well, we made our lineup. We went through all of the different positions. I feel like we did a good job again. We made it through nearly 2 hours here. Got even longer this week. Any final words for people?
I don't know. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. I really do appreciate you guys hanging out with us on a Saturday afternoon. It's really fun having a very active chat to kind of throw things off of different people, bringing in different questions, sometimes unique perspectives. So really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And of course, if you haven't hit that like button, please do hit the like button. That is very helpful for us as well. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend and good luck tomorrow.